That's a good place to start on, I think. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Woo! Wow, lame. How are you doing? There we go. So I'm one of those guys, ask twice. Welcome, everybody, to Design System London number 8. I'm sorry it's taken so long for us to be back, but we're here and we got a fantastic lineup for you today, as always, with some absolutely amazing speakers. And you're going to get some great insights and takeaway, and you're going to walk away from here thinking, oh my God, design systems, I got this. So, who am I standing here in front of you? Oh, we got more people coming. Come, don't worry. Join. So my name is Louise Klievsjö. I challenge you to say that surname, but you can just call me Louise, it's fine. I'm head of product design at YLD. I've been working with design systems for quite a while. I've been working with people who have issues with design system and trying to help people understand those better. And also, I get to work with a lot of people who actually know a lot about design systems. That's why I'm here, because to be honest, they know a lot more than I do. You can obviously look at the agenda for this evening. We got welcome intros that's happening right now. These are the talks today. We got design system from team members' point of view from Damola. We got orchestrating a unified design system across multiple brands, products, and ecosystems. Wow, that's a bit of a tongue twister. By Tony. Then we take a break, and then we have Burnout. Why do design systems exhaust us, and what can we do about it? By Amy. After each talk, we are not going to have questions, but we are going to have a Q&A at the end. For those of you who have been here before, you're very familiar with this setup. So if you have any questions for the speakers, please do not be shy. You can ask them live here in the room if you feel brave enough. You all look brave enough, so I'm sure you can do that. And if you don't, we have a QR code that I will come back to in a second. Then we'll wrap up, and then we have some networking. We got a bar, pub, establishment called the Gas Station, am I right? Very nearby, it's very difficult to miss. It's got an amazing sign that says the gas station. We all go there afterwards. Some logistics, code of conduct. If you are using our Slido deck to ask questions, please keep your language clean. If you're speaking in the room, please keep your language clean. Be kind to each other in general, and don't share anything inappropriate. Speaking of sharing, social media, we are on X, previously known as Twitter. Don't know if some people refuse to call it X, if you want to call it Twitter, or if you refuse to call it Twitter, but we're on there, at DSLConf or at YLD.io. You can also follow us on LinkedIn if you are not doing that already, and join our group. There's a few hashtags, so if you are sharing, which you should be, because there's a lot of interesting things happening, please use the hashtag DSL, hashtag Design System London. I know it's the longest one in the world, but it's good. And hashtag Design Systems. So the QR code I'm mentioning, one QR code to rule them all. On this QR code, I'm going to leave this up. Let me know if it doesn't work. It should be working. You can ask questions to the speakers. That's where you find the Slido deck. You can follow us. You can join us. You can see a recording from previous talks. So if there is anything in particular that you're wondering about, there's probably a whole library of it on there on YouTube. You can find out about YLD and what we do. YLD, that's me here, over here. You can also check out our code for those of you who are wondering if we can actually do that. We can, it's on there. And if you're looking for a job, there is also a listing of all our openings. So yeah, basically one QR code, leaving this up for a bit. Cameras are still up. In the meantime, I'm going to take my glasses off so I can actually see you guys, because right now it's a choice between the screen or you. So I'm going to pick you for a second. Has anyone been to DSL before? A few people. Okay, so that means that we have a few first-timers here. Who is a DSL virgin? Nice. We have a lot of new people. That's awesome. Love that. Okay, that's very nice. I hope you all have a great night. I think you will. It's going to be fantastic. Right, so let's move on from the QR code. Cameras are down now. We are going to start off with a word from our amazing speakers, YLD and NewDay, because without those, these events wouldn't happen. We are always trying to find exciting people to work and collaborate with when we do these events, people that have done some excellent, interesting work in the industry, or people who have something to say. So we are going to start with our continuous sponsor, which is YLD. So I want to welcome Julie from YLD, who's going to say a quick few words. And welcome. Here you go. Thank you.
Thank you. 。 . 。
. 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . .
。 .
. 。. 。. 。. 。. 。. 。. 。. 。. 。. 。. 。. 。.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julie. I'm the head of tech at WRD. I look after client relationship, making sure they've got the right blend of talent, design, engineering, and delivery. WRD is a software engineering and product design company. We work with a range of international clients from a variety of industry, from fintech, healthcare, media, renewable energy, more and more. And we basically help our clients solve problems and grow their technical and digital skills. We support them with all things design, from research, UI, UX, and of course, design system, as well also as software engineering. We have an amazing team of product designers, software engineers, platform engineers, data scientists, and we basically work very collaboratively with our clients to create and build innovative solutions for their challenges and also share knowledge. We have offices in the UK, in London, but also in Lisbon and Porto. We are remote first, but hybrid as well. And we are always looking for talents. So please do look on our website. It's updated. We are looking for perms, but also contractors, and always looking for amazing people. So connect with us on LinkedIn as well, and come and talk to me always at the end of the event if you want to learn a bit more about us or join us. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much, NewDay, and thank you, YLD, for the great support. Our second sponsor for this evening, which is the people from NewDay.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our lovely King's Cross office. I'm joined with my colleague, Verona, here. I'm just going to run through a couple of bits about who we are and some housekeeping. So, fire exits. They are the same way that you came in, this way. Bathrooms are also located just on the left of the barriers. And our Wi-Fi, our guest Wi-Fi is available as well. So I'll leave that for just a second in case anyone wants to connect. One of the reasons we get involved in events like this is so that we can let people in the community know who we are and know that we've got great people ourselves, great experts in the business, and who can share their expertise. So we're really excited to be involved in events like this, and we're super grateful for YLD and DSL for letting us get involved. So who are NewDay? You are probably more familiar with some of our brands. So we are a credit provider. So 1 in 5 UK credit cards issued are by NewDay. So you might be familiar with Fluid, Marbles, BIP, or Aqua. Those are our credit cards. We kind of work in three different areas. So we've got different partnerships. So we power the John Lewis credit card and the Argos credit card. We also have a NewDay platform, so that's working with Deco and Black Horse. And as I just mentioned, our direct-to-consumer business, which is our credit frame. So now I've gone through all of that lovely stuff. Onto the business. So we are also hiring. We've got a variety of different roles in engineering, product, and marketing available. So feel free to scan the QR code. This will bring you up to our community where you can sign up. And if there isn't the right role available for you just now, you can sign up, share your details, and then we'll get in touch with the right role for you. So now I'm going to hand over to someone who does know what they're talking about. My lovely colleague, Verona. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Raquel. Got experience sitting at the back bench and just not being able to hear the fantastic, and so just want to make sure you can. Welcome to NewDay. It's amazing turnout. I have to say, this did not make me nervous at all, seeing so many people here. But I just want to say, my name is Harry Miller, and I'm Senior Manager of Product Design, and I couldn't be more excited to be here with you guys. It's funny, when I was asked to do this little intro, I questioned if I was the right person, because the artist in me should take design systems. I like them chaos. I like to break rules. I like to bring new experiences. But I think precisely because of this, I love design systems. The
the product designer in me gets a night twitch when she sees an inconsistencies, but the design system appeases my OCD. It also makes my life easier. I spend less time fretting about the details, and I get to spend more time in what the artist immediately cares about, which is the overall user experience. The design system does the heavy lifting, so my little artist heart can run wild. Before I get stuck into the great evening that we have, I used to say how excited I am that we are hosting it here. I still remember when I first joined, which was shortly after we had started our design system journey. And I remember in an interview, Tony told me that we didn't have a design system. And I was like, the horror, you know? Thinking about the files there must be, especially in an enterprise with so many brands, about not having a centralized source of the truth and what that must do. So, like most designers and developers in this room with things like it, yeah. But as one of my colleagues told me, Taluga, Churchill is not here tonight. Like, they tell her and we give her a shout out. We should see the lack of processes and structures as opportunities. Opportunities to shape the future of design here at NewDay, and I absolutely love that. In previous roles, I have felt like a salmon swimming upstream and unable to influence my surroundings and struggling to get to my destination. But at NewDay, I've got the great opportunity of being a beaver. Shaping the landscape, creating new paths, and changing the course of the river. Let it rain in the day of and me. And finish off by saying the design systems are the backbone of seamless and cohesive user experience. They provide a common language between designers, developers, and stakeholders alike, and they enable us to build products that not only look stunning, but also work amazingly. Honestly, I can't wait for us to roll out our design system. It will make onboarding new designers faster, will hopefully help with the consistency within the product design team, and will bring us and studio closer. It will make bringing new designers a lot faster, and, you know, what is there not to love about that? The only thing that we have to say about the word faster is that stakeholders absolutely love that. Thank you for listening to me tonight, and I hope you're just as excited as I am to hear the next talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you so much. Oh, yes, I think you might want that one. There you go, have that. It's gonna grab a quick sip, but no. Yeah, so I might ask to borrow Rona for the next event, because I don't think I could have said that better myself. So from now on, you will have to come with me. That is awesome. Let's remind ourselves about this fabulous QR code again. The one that I really want you to look out for is to ask questions to the speakers. So have a look at the Slido throughout the talk. If there are any questions, just pop them in there and we will bring them up in the Q&A later. Or as I said, if you feel like tonight is the night, I'm going to put my hand up, I'm going to have a microphone in my face, and I'm going to ask a question live in this room. If that's you tonight, that can happen. Your dreams could come true. Okay, so let's see who's out first. We got design systems from a team member's point of view. So I want to welcome our first speaker, Damola.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here. It's been 4-5 months in the making because we got delayed a couple of times. But yeah, my name is Damola and I'm a product designer currently at Spotify. I've been doing design for a while. I joined Spotify a little under 2 years ago. And yeah, that's me, basically. Very simple, product designer, nothing else. But yeah, at Spotify, what I work on is mostly around playing. So it sounds very, very weird when I say it's around playing. But yeah, I worked in playing experiences, which is basically when a user taps on something, what happens? You play stuff, long and short of it. But right now I'm currently working on curation and retrieval, which is not a very fun thing for everybody, but it's like when you save something, where does it go to? Your library. But yeah, let's move on. So, check of hands, how many of us work on design systems here? Some point in the time, oh, quite a number of people. How many of us use design systems or have used at any point in time? Okay, so the talk is for you. Yeah, so what's a design system? That's it. The design system is a collection of it's a collection of reusable components and clear standards that can be assembled together to build any number of applications. Fancy and fantastic stuff even. But why are we here? A typical thing is, more often than not, we get a lot of talks about design systems from the people that work on this stuff, the people that actually build the systems, right? And we talk about components, we talk about foundations, we talk about tokens. We love tokens. We talk about colors and icons, right? But there are actual human beings that use this thing every single day. Like every product, like Spotify, there are people that use Spotify. I work on it, and sometimes I get carried away and forget that there are actual human beings using my product, right? And I think it's somewhat similar with design systems, right? It's very easy to go, oh, I'm creating a bunch of components and a bunch of stuff. But the people using it work with you every single day. Like, those are your users, right? So design systems are pretty much like any product. The difference is that the product lives in code, more often than not, and sometimes it lives in Figma, most times. So how do you treat a product? How do you treat your users? Typically, you want to hear what your thoughts are. You want to know what they think about your product, what they feel about your product. And you also want to hear their point of view more often than not. Because really, there's no product if your users' voices are not heard, right? So yeah. So let's get into it. So for this talk, basically, I'll be talking about design systems from the point of view of myself and a couple of designers I spoke with, maybe like 5 of them, to understand some of the things that they had done in the past, what they like about their design systems or the design systems they've used in the past, what did they enjoy about them. And the very first thing is onboarding. I think it's pretty much the most important part of any product. How do you get users on your product? How do you get them using your product? Has anybody ever designed any onboarding experience before in the past? Please raise your hands, please. Okay. It's one of those things that we tend to overlook because most times we work on the core product in itself, and then down the line, like, oh, so when we get a new user, how does this new user use the product? But the question is, what is onboarding? Onboarding is basically getting somebody introduced to something and getting them familiar with a particular thing. And who is it for? From design systems point of view, your onboarding is typically for your engineers and your designers, but it's easy to get carried away. And I'm going to talk about from 2 points, right? The first point is when you're releasing a fresh design system. And that means we're releasing something new for the team currently. And what that means is that we would sometimes think, oh, we've built this fantastic stuff, we shared with the team already, that we're doing this, we've gotten buy-in and everything. But now we're sharing with the team that we're done. This is what you need to use or what you should be using. That is typically very, very smooth and straightforward. But there's a flip side. When new team members join your team, when you get a new designer, when you get a new engineer on your team, how do you get them introduced to the system? How do you get them using the system? How do you get them familiar with specific things, right? Right? And this experience can vary, and it can vary because people's familiarity with design systems can also vary. When I joined Spotify, I worked at a number of startups. So we had style guides. We didn't really have design systems because we were typically like maybe maximum of 10 designers, so it wasn't necessary, right? When I joined Spotify, I saw this huge design system with more designers working on the design system than I had worked with designers in the past ever. And it was quite challenging. right? It was quite something. So yeah, I had a couple of problems, and then we needed to face them. I need to figure those things out. So first, we'll talk about new versus old, experts versus beginners. Something I saw that worked at Spotify was having sort of like this onboarding call. So they just like gather a bunch of designers, new joiners together. And when the new joiners sort of are on the call, you explain, oh, this is where this component is, this is what this color means, this is how we use tokens, and this is how everything is structured, right? But it was sort of like designed for expert level designers at using design systems. But one thing that crossed my mind was, you can't obviously solve onboarding for every single person at a specific level of detail. A nice to have would be to have, this is what you should know about this, Spotify's design system, but these are the other things that are important for you as a design system newbie in some sense. And you can click this couple of links because you can't always save all these things. These things are available online already, right? You can click these links and find out one or two things. But yeah. So, naming things. We all love naming things, right? Yeah. So, more often than not, most design systems will have like a cool name. At Spotify, we call it Encore. I think Google calls theirs material design or material U. And it's nice to like find a nice name for things, right? But it's important to keep things as simple as possible, keep them straightforward and succinct. For example, this is simple text called heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, body 1 and body 2. Very, very simple. But when I joined Spotify, we had bars, because most things were like around music, and it took me a week to understand what those things meant, right? Yeah, it's very, very funny, but as time went on, I understood, oh yeah, this is bars, and this is ballad, and this is some mesto, and it made sense eventually, like all these things are around music. But for a newbie, it's like, I don't know what this means, but I had to use it, I had to work with them. But I hacked around and I figured these things out, and it made sense eventually, but for a newbie, you still don't know, right? So as I said earlier, we tend to create these systems with the assumption that everybody understands what's going on. And we also create with the assumption that everybody has some form of prerequisite knowledge about systems already. But it's important that we build proper systems. Oh, go on. That we build proper systems and always think about all these other people, right? And this is a straight quote from someone I spoke with, Mustafa, who works at Meta. And he said like his biggest pain point is just the sheer naming of things, like looking for a component that is called tags or labels that do essentially the same thing, but at this previous company, they call them tags. And I moved to a new company and they call them labels, right? And I search for it and I can't find it, right? Or this fantastic component called a drop-down, but then has search in it, right? And it's like a searchable drop-down. But then sometimes when you add a checkbox to it, like multi-select drop-down with search in it, right? And Microsoft calls it a combo box, but it doesn't make sense. It's not it's a combo box in some sense, because like if you use Windows in the early 90s, that's what they called it. But I'm fairly young, I'm up to 30 yet, so it's not a combo box to me. It's a searchable multi-select drop-down, right? So as such, when you're naming these things, in as much as you're going to give it a standardized name, you want to make sure that you have enough details and aliases in them, such a way that if I search for searchable drop-down, I can still find something, right? I can search for drop-down, I can still find it, right? And then we'll talk about flexibility and completeness. This is my best friend, detach instance. Every single week, I detach something. People probably hate me for it, but it's just like the way things go. Show of hands, how many people uses this wonderful thing in Figma every week or every day? Don't be scared. Don't worry. It's fine. So I use it very, very often. And the reason for this is we tend to design for completeness, right? We want this one component that can do every single thing. And that's fine. I guess it's not fine sometimes, right? Yeah. So what I found is that it's fine not to have a complete component, right? You want to have like subsets, like say for example, this is my good friend here. This searchable drop-down multi-select stuff, right? It's fine to have a search component, and it's fine to have this drop-down side of it, and it's fine to have a text field, and give people the flexibility to actually attach these things together, right? And my reason for saying it sounds very crazy, but it gives people the feeling of like, oh, I own this stuff, I can do stuff with it, right? And there's this, maybe not the saying per se, but when you feel caged in, more often than not, you want to break free, right? And the reason why people detach components is because they feel caged in and they're finding ways to like express themselves or solve a user need or find a solution to a problem, right? So design for flexibility and design for flexibility, but it's not compulsory to be fully complete, right? A fantastic thing that we don't cater for is when things change. So more often than not, when something changes, I see this fantastic pop-up at the bottom right corner of my Figma file that tells me, is it accept changes or something? And then it pops up an explanation of, oh, this has changed and this has changed, and I accept it because I'm very naive. And my Figma file basically scatters. And I have to start wrangling things together and fix my auto layout and break my auto layout and start moving things one by one. But yeah, when things change, it's important that we don't just change things for the sake of it, right? There is a feeling that you get when you start seeing inconsistencies in your file or in your product. It was like, oh, we need to consolidate everything at once. But maybe sometimes there's no need to consolidate everything immediately. Reason being, if you consolidate every single thing, you would have a very, very bloated design system, right? If you try to we need to componentize every single thing, you have a very bloated design system. So it's fine to embrace a bit of chaos, let things scatter just a little bit, and then consolidate later down the line. I'll give an example, right, or a reason why this might make a bit of sense. So if you have a component where one team uses it fairly regularly because they combined this, and this together, and they use it for their work, there's no point adding to the main design system or to the design system at all because it has one use case. The moment you start seeing it pop up 4 or 5 times, then you can begin to say, oh, we should consolidate this, right? So letting chaos occur is good. And the upside of that is when you finally decide to consolidate things, you have a starting point. It's easier to start from 0.5 than to start from 0. Essentially means 1 or 4 different teams have worked on this thing in the past already, and you don't have to start fundamental research as much. You can pick from their code, pick from their designs, and pick inspiration from them. And that gives you a way to up-level your design system a lot faster, right? But if you don't embrace that chaos, it means that design system team needs to do all of that work and will not be able to lean on the team in itself, right? There's the next exciting thing, I guess, get a lot of quicker wins when the work is done by other teams. It's very, very fun when somebody else has worked on something and you just pick it up and put it in yeah, we won, right? The other fun thing is documentation, and this is the art of design systems. There's maybe not a saying per se, but there's a notion I have where if it's not written down, it's not done. Because, say for example, you tell me, oh, this is a card, but there's no way to explain the behavior of the card, the states of this card, and basically understanding when to use it and when not to use it, right? If it's not documented down, it means that I could use it anyhow I want to use it, and then you come back later down the line and say, oh yeah, we only use this card during onboarding. This is the different card we use when we're trying to sell stuff to a user, or we're trying to complete checkout, right? So having a single source of truth is important. Having a source of truth that is set in stone and everybody can always trust is also very important. Give me a second. Yeah, having a source that I can always trust is also very important. An interesting reason why documentation is good is when you have documentation, when you do full-blown redesigns or you have tweaks to your product, you can basically export it. Like more often than not, a button would always behave the way a button behaves everywhere, no matter what, right? So it's that one thing where sometimes when you do it once, maybe you tweak it once, a couple of times, but it doesn't really change a lot, right? So it's those quick wins you can always have when you're updating your design system or when you're making changes to it. All right. And the wonderful thing called governance. Governance is essentially how you manage your design system. Who do I go and meet when I want to make changes to the design system, or when I want to add something to the design system? Who is that person that I need to meet? Or what is the structure in which changes happen? Right. At my current company, we do governance is very interesting, and it's sort of set in the way your company is actually set, right? We have like a pod structure with like different squads, and within every squad group or different business unit, there is a design systems person or people that stay there. And there's like a core design system team, right? And the reason for that is that because of the uniqueness of each of this team or uniqueness of each of this product, it's important that we're feeding from a main source of truth, but at the same time, we give every product the ability to be flexible and to change and to basically do what they want to do because of the uniqueness of all of these things, right? I've also seen that quite a number of teams want to instantly replicate, oh, what does Dropbox do? Or what does Airbnb do? But the truth is, most times, we have teams that are fairly smaller, and as such, you want your design systems governance to be structured in the way your team is structured. And as your team evolves, you then begin to make those changes, right? So that it sort of replicates the organization. But yeah, wrapping things up. Onboarding, basically, how do people get introduced to the design system? How do people get used to it? Naming things, how am I able to find things efficiently? Flexibility and completeness. Changing things, how do people know when things have changed? Documentation and governance. Thank you very much. My name is...
Thank you very much, Damola. For those of you who are interested in hearing more about design system at Spotify, we actually have a talk on our YouTube channel, just plugging that a little bit quickly here as well. A talk made 5 years ago by one of Damola's colleagues, and there is also Into Design System, where the same speaker made a very similar talk and an update 5 years later. So for those of you who are interested, and obviously you all are, there is on the YouTube channel, which you can obviously find on this fantastic QR code that I have been telling you about earlier. This is when I have a tech issue because now I can't go back. There we go. Look at that. That's the QR code right there. If you have any questions for Damola, please put them in the Slido. For any speaker, if the question is targeted directly at that speaker, it would be really helpful if you add the name as well. Otherwise, we might not know who it's for. But the whole point of a Q&A is that everybody gets a chance to answer your question, so you get input from everybody. So I can see that there are already some questions in there, so I'm expecting to see more questions in a bit. Very exciting stuff. We are having the next speaker being mic'd up. In the meantime, we did ask our speakers to give us some fun facts about themselves. And Damola, I hope you're ready for the onslaught that might come from your fun fact. He admitted in an email, it's in writing, I got receipts, he likes pineapple on his pizza. Oh, there are some mixed feelings about that. Yes, I know. Unfortunately, we haven't got any Damola-friendly pizza here this evening, but I hope that you will be happy anyway. This next speaker, while he's getting his final mic'd up, he told us that he used to be a very successful Call of Duty player in his teenage years. So, you know, esteemed people on stage this evening, they're just saying that so you all understand how much effort we put into getting the best speakers for you.
Hello. Big whoops there. That's all going in your end of years. Well done. Cool. So, I've got a few, move them out of the way. So yeah, I'm here to follow on from the awesome talk that Rona mentioned. We have started a journey into design systems, and I do still remember the look on Rona's face when I did say we don't have a design system, but it's coming, I promise. So yeah, I'm here to talk through a little bit more in depth around that journey and talk about our business here at NewDay and the multiple brands and products and ecosystems that we have to navigate on a daily. So first off, who am I? My name is Tony. I head up our product design team here at NewDay. I've been with NewDay for 5 years, worked across pretty much all areas of the business, and I've been in the industry for over 15 years. I live in the Garden of England. I'm not sure I would call it that if you've seen some of the places that I've seen, but that is down in southeast Kent. And there's my LinkedIn there if you want to give me any nice stories about your visits to the Garden of England. Cool, so I'll start off with who is NewDay? NewDay is a leading consumer finance and technology business, and we serve nearly 5 million customers with responsible access to credit. We are a purpose-driven company. Our purpose is to help people move forward with credit. Our portfolio has many different brands, 7 core brands that are ours, that Rona touched on, but we also work with over 10 retail partners as well. So hopefully I'm starting to paint the picture of we have our own brands, we work with other brands, how does that fit within the design system? And to add more complexity to that, we have 4 core product areas. That's our direct to consumer, business to business, business to customer, and platforms business. As part of the technical side and the engineering and the design side of the business, we have over 400 engineers, back and front, full stack. And we also have 13 product designers who work across 15 digital products as well. So hopefully that paints a bit of a picture about who NewDay is. So in natural fashion, designer in me will start by exploring the problem space and the problem domain. I think this quip here pretty much sums up our journey 2.5 years ago. We could smell a lot of smoke, but we couldn't really find the fires. So we started to peel back where we think the smoke was coming from. And this is just a highlight of some of the problems that we found across the space. So top left, we have 6 proprietary code repositories, all feeding different squads. Already that is just wildly inefficient. We have 100+ Figma component libraries across multiple projects, and 0 of the components that sit within those 100+ libraries were reused across our products. Product designers are well renowned for being super efficient. 25% in designer and engineering's time to maintain. And we also done a kind of a quick retro looking at design and technical debt, and we forecasted 5+ sprints needed to rework a lot of the work that we are continuing to maintain and using up all of our designer time and also our engineering time. And over 5 products with an inconsistent design language across our portfolio. So yeah, hopefully this paints a bit of a picture of where we were at roughly around 1.5 years ago. And to visualize that, as we are predominantly visual creatures, this is pretty much a workflow of our core product areas. So as you can see, most product areas have their own component library that are pushing into a repo, and then we get into a spaghetti junction, into the end, into production. So yeah, as you can imagine, changing one component across 6 different teams was a challenge, to say the least. So I'll move on to the foundational aspects of building this product, and I think the previous speaker mentioned it really, really well. You need to treat product design systems as its own product. So we pulled together a little tactical team and started to peel back and decide what the foundations were that we wanted to build for our design system. So we started with a very clear vision and a very clear mission to help shape that future. And we use this as the poster to rally more people across the business to advocate and buy into this. So our vision was very, very clear. It's to enable a design landscape which unifies creativity and functionality, enabling seamless, inclusive experiences across an ever-expanding product portfolio at NewDay. And if you'll speak to any of my team up the back, you'll know that we have a new product every month, so it is challenging to keep up with the pace of the business. But that's where our shared vision helped us. And we wanted to have something that when we walked in the door, we had a mission, we had a purpose to enable this. And that is ultimately to create a universal design language with scalable, standardized components, fueling our teams to efficiently craft cohesive, accessible experiences across a diverse product portfolio. So moving on, again, trying to visualize that, we started to map out what areas of the business that this would touch into. And as you can see on the screen, external partners is a big piece, as we work with over 10 retail partners as well. So we have external third-party needs that we need to accommodate. We have an incredible brand and studio team here that are our brand guardians that will provide us our brand's tone of voice, our guidelines, our assets, our colors. Marketing as well. Again, we feed a lot of the marketing team, a lot of campaign work. So again, working with those individuals to ensure that they are consistent. And also product design as well. We work very closely with our product teams. We are also based in a squad model here at NewDay as well. So we have cross-functional teams. We also have designers that are embedded in those squads as well. So it's important that we work incredibly well and closely with our colleagues. Accessibility as well. We take that very, very seriously here at NewDay to ensure that we are providing an inclusive experience for all, and engineering as well, working with our counterparts to ensure that what we are designing actually makes it to screen. And last but not least, are the very important people that will consume what we design and produce in our design system, and that's our customers. Again, so building on the foundations, we had a very clear vision and a very clear mission, but we needed some principles day by day that we follow. And these were broken down into these 5 key areas. Cohesive, and to ensure that every element that we build feels part of a family and it feels familiar and is efficiently reusable. Precise, again, we are a regulated business. We have to answer to the FCA and ensure that we have the right policies in place and regulations. So we need to ensure that what we are producing and releasing to customers is adhering to those policies. Again, accessible, it's incredibly important to us. Just guaranteeing the inclusivity and usability across all of our products and our components. And naturally, our thinking was if we are introducing components into the design system and releasing these out to products, but they are accessibility checked and complete when they arrive, then naturally we'll start to release components out to design systems, and by default that product will be accessible when it consumes 100% of the design system. Efficient, again, we are a fast growth business, we are a commercial business, so delivery and speed is everything, and we also want to make sure that we are streamlining design and development processes with high quality components. And scalable, again, as I mentioned, we have a new product or a new venture or a new initiative every other week, so we need to make sure that our design system can scale for the business to meet the business needs. And then the last part is around our design strategy. As I mentioned, we cater for many different external partners and many different core products that we have. So we have a white label offering, and our products are built around that brand agnostic view. That's just to ensure that we can ultimately skin and theme our products and release them to many different partners when we take on new clients. And this is our rough early thinking of how a design token and theme could complement our white label strategy. So ultimately design tokens that feed into a white label theme, and that white label theme uses the same colors and the same standardizations and applies a theme to different to different products and different partners, but the core components stay the same. So the approach, I think this quip was very much taken into consideration. Did we follow it? Probably not. We did try and do a lot of things at once, very quickly, and I think we got a lot of learnings from that approach. So reflecting on past attempts, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we've seen. Before we engaged with YLD, and I'll touch on that shortly, we tried numerous different attempts to try and establish a design system in-house with the team that we have here at NewDay. We had an approach of champions. These were individuals that would champion a design system and go out to the business and advocate for a design system, and trying to bring in people. We also had side of desk as well. These were individuals that were working on the design system alongside their product commitments. And if there are any product owners or product managers in here, woe betide you if you take a designer away from squad time. I had some very heated emails around that. We also had a few people that were going rogue as well, scribbling away in a room somewhere, trying to build something from scratch and from new. And probably the key point around this is all three of these approaches were happening at the same time. So yeah, it was quite challenging to be able to rein in, but I think that was a wake-up call for us that we needed a bit of help and we needed a bit of investment. And I think what we were trying to do was bigger than us. And I think that was quite a humbling moment for us all, which then segues quite nicely into the next era is we needed investment. So I think naturally in large businesses, you'll pitch for work, and it was my job to pitch to our exec team for investment, to bring in help and bring in support to get this off the ground and start to build out a design system. And I had a few key learnings from that experience. It wasn't so much Dragon's Den. I mean, we have a fantastic exec crew here that are very calming and very welcoming. So key learnings from that process, I think one is know your audience. These are people that will understand certain speak. So, you know, in quotes, be able to be comfortable in talking business. And when I say business, be comfortable in talking around efficiencies that a design system will bring. If a design system is introduced into a squad that has a velocity of 70 points per sprint, you could possibly look to get that up to 100 points per sprint, because again, it's being comfortable and knowing the audience that you're talking around. And also productivity is also a huge one, and rework as well, which, as I mentioned, 25% of our time in design and engineering was constantly working and maintaining this design system that we had at the point of time. Articulate a clear vision. Again, I think outline the vision of where you see the future and where you see this design system sitting within the business and what it will bring. Again, being able to talk about future growth and future capabilities that this will bring to not only the business but also the teams as well. And the last thing as well is being able to demonstrate value, show the return of what introducing a design system will bring. Again, this can be monetary value, this can be productivity, this can be increased velocity, this can be cost savings because you're more efficient. Again, it's getting into that mindset of being able to think how you can tailor your pitch to your audience. And another thing as well that helped secure investment from NewDay is being able to talk through the payback period. And actually, when you invest, you'll invest a chunk of money, but then you want to see a return over a certain period, because this was such a high return, a high quick return. Our payback was super short, so naturally that swayed in my favour when talking with our exec team. So once we secured investment, we embarked on a new collaboration. NewDay and YLD. YLD have been working with NewDay for a fair while. We're on our engineering side. There's a few engineers here that are supplied by YLD. So I was introduced to Luis and then later on to Jen and James. So again, forging a new relationship and embarking on new collaboration. These were at YLD and NewDay. They ultimately came in to help us establish what our vision was and what our design system wanted to be, and to help us along that journey. So I'll just talk through the 3-phase approach here. So phase 1 was ultimately discovery, and as you can see on the right, as part of one of our discovery pieces was a UI audit. This is just one example of many. As you can see, we had 3 versions of a date of birth field that all failed accessibility. So again, we were in a good space. We were doing well. So James and Jen came in and just rubbed salt in the wound, which was always helpful. But it opened our eyes to understand, okay, cool, maybe we've got a few inconsistencies, maybe it's a little bit worse than what we initially thought, but it's good to have that humbling moment. And again, stakeholder interviews, as I say, NewDay is a very vast, large company that many people are invested across our engineering teams. Many people across different product owners. YLD set up a lot of talks and spoke with people for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks straight. And then also done an accessibility review as well. As I say, accessibility is very dear to our hearts. The second phase we moved on into was workshops and guidelines. Again, as mentioned, we have many different themes, many different partners we work for. So every different partner has a different brand guideline. So we have to make sure that we are flexible and customizable, which birthed the theme kit. So that workshop was to establish what we felt was needed as part of the theme kit and how that would integrate with the design system, how you manage it, how you maintain it, how you add new themes, etc., etc. Naming conventions, that's a big one for developers. We've got any developers here as well. As what we found out is what you name up front, the convention you set up front rolls down into the code. So to ensure that is efficient as possible. And also just thinking through the foundations and the guidelines that we have for the design system, and to ensure that is clear, documented, and I completely agree, if it's not documented, it's not done, which is a great way of putting it. Phase 3 was the final phase, again, so taking all of this discovery, all of the workshops, all of the knowledge, all the insights, and all the learnings, and building this into theme kits, components, tokens, and documentation. As I mentioned, we go across many different platforms, so we have web offerings, we have iOS offerings and Android offerings, and thinking about the complexity of one token that can work across web, iOS, and Android is always an interesting challenge. I think we still need to crack a little bit on the app side of things, but I think we've nailed it across the web space. Crafting foundational UI documentation as well. It's important to have the grids, the spacings, the structures, the typography, to set the standards there. As I mentioned, standardization was, I think, a word that I said every other week to James and Jen. They were probably sick of it. And then creating design tokens for our white label strategy, again, meeting our business objectives for white labeling our product offering, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, just a few examples there across the different phases of the deliverables. So again, with improving our, now we have all of this amazing content, these materials. We have, as I say, we've got color guidelines, we've got typography, we've got UI documentation. We turned our focus onto the pipeline. Again, if you can go back to that screen, everyone has their own pipeline in each vertical across the different teams. So we want to simplify that as much as possible for designers and engineers. This is a very, very simplified version, but ultimately all of our core components are housed in Figma along with their variants. Our brand theme kit, so working with our brand and studio team, we build these together, and the colors and everything that are set there are then added into Token Studio. So It starts at the beginning, it starts at Figma. We also use a new tool called Supernova. We did use Zero Height, but I think the scale, as we realized, is a little bit bigger than us. It was more of an enterprise system that we needed. So we onboarded Supernova, and in Supernova, it houses our principles, our usage guidelines, the do's and don'ts, the behavioral guidelines, accessibility, best practice, code snippets as well. So once the engineers, as you can see, moves into Storybook and they create the component in Storybook, we grab that code snippet and we also include it in Supernova too. and brand guidelines and design tokens as well. And Supernova has this amazing feature to auto build the JSON and the code that pushes out to the engineer's pipeline. So then they receive that to build the components in Storybook, which Storybook will house obviously the components, theme files, design tokens, HTML, and then that is pushed out into the respective repos across the business. Well, one repo, that is the goal, instead of 6, 1. And the web repo and app repo, they sync together across tokens, and then they are pushed out to our web offerings and also our app offerings as well. So there's a very simplified view of where we're at. And where we had all these new processes, we had all these new tools, again, we still had some very passionate people. And on the process, on the point of governance, we needed to have some governance and checkpoints around this to ensure that consistency remains high, the quality remains high, and everyone stays and everyone remains engaged. To which we have set up a design system council. And this is a collection of people from the Android teams, from the iOS teams, the web teams, brand and studio, and also respectively in product design across web and mobile too. And the ultimate goal is to facilitate, support, and safeguard the design system across the business. They have a few principles: ensure consistency, so everything that is coming in and through the design system to ensure that it's consistent and it maintains uniform principles. Promote collaboration. Again, these individuals will be working closely together. So if there's a new component that's coming through on web, it might be a chat to the iOS and Android teams to ensure that we're having consistency across our design and the design practice. We also set standards as well. We are the governors of standards to ensure that they are high at always. Again, to make sure to ensure our precise principle is at the front of mind. And lastly, to boost efficiency as well, and to ensure that things don't get stuck. There aren't any blockers or people don't know who to go to get things moving. So that's a little bit of our journey of where we're at. I think we are still on that journey. We still got a little bit to go next year. Our next year is focusing on implementation. I think we built a lot of the bedrock of our design system now. So now it's a conversation with our different product teams as well, where the design system will impact, and talking through implementation plans, phase plans of introducing new components, and how can we start to automate that process as well. But I think on reflection, just thinking back over the last year and the awesome engagement that we've had with YLD over the first 6 months of that year, there's a few learnings that were quite apparent to us. And sharing these with you, I think that the first one is approach the design system as you would a product. I think that is one of our core learnings. It should be resourced, it should have metrics behind it, you should be able to prove its value, it should be iterative, and it should be delivering at every stage cycle as well, and it should be tracked and versioned to ensure that it is an actual self-sustaining product. The second point, rally a dedicated team with clear ownership. I think we learned that one the hard way with the champions, the rogues, the side of desk. I think we tried all the approaches where I think the actual solution was just staring us in the face. And sometimes it may feel a little bit awkward to be like, oh, I need to go and pitch for investment, or I need my exec team to invest in this design system. It can be a little bit daunting, but it's worthwhile, and it's paid off for us as well, as we have obviously had a great engagement with YLD. Third one is spend time mapping the landscape, and what I mean by that is naturally, I think there's an inherent belief that it's just for designers and it's just for engineers. It's to build that common language between the two teams. But on reflection and exploration, it's larger. It can feed our marketing teams. It can feed our external partners. It can feed our accessibility teams, our copywriters. So there's lots of opportunities for lots of different teams to feed into a design system and help support and grow this design system going forward. And then the final point is find your peeps. There are people across the business that are super passionate about design systems. It's half the battle as well, from previous examples, previous experience and chatting to friends in other companies. It's either one way or the other. You've got a really passionate design team that really want to set up a design system, and then you've got an engineering team that are like, yeah, it's cool, but we're really busy. And then it's also vice versa as well. So I think to engage with the business and to start to drum up support and advocate for design system, find the passionate people, because build relationships with them, because they'll start to support and they'll grow and they'll help advocate and they'll shout from the rooftops about how amazing a design system is, and you start to create that internal FOMO, which then leads into obviously just conversations and people wanting to get involved. We're quite lucky here because we have very passionate engineers and designers here that want to create a design system. But yeah, I think those are my four final pieces of advice and takeaways as well. So I will say thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I have been told that, oh God, not at all. No. Brilliant. This is not even my laptop, so I don't even know where I'm clicking. I know, right? Such a good start. I'm looking for the deck. This is entertainment on a high level. There we go. So I have been told that apparently this QR code is not hasn't got contrast enough. And you know what? Yes, I was looking at the purple on the black and I was thinking, who signed this off? Unfortunately, I think there might be a moment of me looking myself in the mirror later, telling myself off. And not only am I going to tell myself off, I'm also going to be told off by our designer because I made this in the break, which they're clearly going to hate. I know, it's a monster. I've created a monster. Please try to see if it works better. Otherwise, I've also created a short URL. I want to ensure that you can all get your questions. Can we have some confirmation from someone with the camera? Is this working? Oh my God, I've ruined everything. I'm going to leave this up so you can get the short URL. That should be working. I tested it. There will be strong words with the team later, mainly me. We'll make sure that for the next one we have a better, more accessible. I can see even our designer is trying to make the QR code working. This is an embarrassing moment. So I'm not going to drag out this embarrassing. Oh, look, I've got evidence. It's working. Okay, you can all go home. You're all wrong. It's working. I'm not going to drag out this embarrassing moment. We're going to take a quick break. And after the break, we're going to hear from our final speaker. And design system is a lot more than just hard work. And sometimes that hard work can put you in a place where you feel completely burnt out. And that's what we're going to hear about after the break. So help yourself to some drinks. There is plenty of it. You look at that table and think, that's a lot of drinks. There is even more. So have drinks, have more food, and I'll call you back in a bit. It's time for Burn Baby Burnout with Amy. Thank you. Go for it.
Hello. Okay, been told to hold this against my chin. I'm not very good at these, so sorry if you came to see my chin tonight. You're not going to. So, thank you for having me, YLD. For those of you that don't know me, I am a content design and design systems consultant based here in the UK. I've worked on design systems for these companies, for gov.uk, for Babylon Health, RIP, for BT, which also includes EE and PlusNet, for Springer Nature, for the Wellcome Trust, and most recently for Camden Council. And I could probably say some quite interesting things about the different kind of organisational models for these design systems or different documentation strategies. or kind of lessons that I've learned about doing this work with all of these different companies. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I've decided to talk to you about burnout. Hands up if you're burnt out. Okay, about half of you. Congratulations to the rest of you for being under 25. So, a couple of months ago, I saw a designer called Christine Valor talking about responsive design. And in the talk, she introduced a German concept that I hadn't heard of before called Sisyphusarbeit, which I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of, so I'm sorry if you're German. And if you're not familiar with the story of Sisyphus, I will explain. So in Greek mythology, Sisyphus was a king who was punished in the afterlife for his deceitfulness. And his eternal punishment was to roll a large boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down every time that it reached the top. So this task was repetitive and futile and never-ending and ultimately meaningless effort. And I realised that this was just about the most accurate description that I'd ever heard of a career in design systems. Now, full disclosure, I'm currently giving you this talk from the depths of my very own personal burnout. It's been a pretty trying year this year for reasons that I won't go into here, but to quote Succession, any Succession fans? Yes? It's been quite the shit show at the fuck factory. Am I allowed to swear? Hopefully so. With that said, it's not the first time that I've had these thoughts about design systems work, and actually this came up earlier today. So at last year's Converge conference in London, I compared those of us working on design systems to salmon swimming upstream against a powerful current of opposing forces that seem determined to drag us back towards our start point. And the thing is that I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. So when I talk to colleagues and friends working in the industry, I hear one reflection over and over again. This shit is exhausting. And recently I've started to think about why this is. So what is it about design systems work in particular that leaves so many of us feeling really depleted and burnt out? Is it kind of the context that we're working in? Is it something to do with the nature of the work? Or is it something inherent in those of us who are drawn to this work that demands systems thinking, that makes us more kind of vulnerable to burnout? And more importantly, is there actually anything we can do about it? Because the bottom line is that as much as I do find this work exhausting, I also actually quite like it. I just wish that it was easier. And I think that's probably true for a lot of you too, because otherwise why would you be here on a Thursday night listening to talks about design systems? So in the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you some reflections about design systems and burnout and some ideas about what might make it better. So the word burnout gets chucked about quite a lot, and I want to start off with a definition to make sure that we're all on the same page. So the term burnout was first coined by a psychologist called Herbert Freudenberger in 1975, and he characterized it by these three components. So the first one was emotional exhaustion, which is the fatigue that comes from caring too much for too long. The second one was depersonalization, so the depletion of empathy, caring, and compassion. And finally, we have a decreased sense of accomplishment, so an unconquerable sense of futility and a feeling that nothing you do makes any difference, which is the Sisyphusarbeit bit. You okay there? And when it comes to design systems, I think it's this third component that is the thing that kind of most commonly leads us to burnout. So why is that? Well, I think there are sort of 5 main reasons that design systems can contribute to a decreased sense of accomplishment that leads to burnout. And they are that we and the organisations that we work for tend to overvalue outputs over outcomes. Design systems are viewed as static products and not living services. Design system value is actually really hard to quantify in the way that's expected. We hear a lot more about our failures than our successes. And lastly, we care far too much about far too much. So I'm going to talk through each one of these points, starting at the top. So overvaluing outputs over outcomes. Now, as the design system space has matured, something that I've noticed is that we've worked really hard to try and converge on this kind of standard definition of what they are. And in doing this, we've started to treat them like a checklist of things to deliver. So as a result of this, I see this kind of overemphasis on artifacts and deliverables, so things that you can sort of point at the expense of what they really are, which is organisational practices. And one common way that I see this manifesting is in a phenomenon that I kind of see in design system teams happening over and over, something that I have started to call the post-launch crash. Now, pre-launch design systems are typically galvanised towards a shared and specific aim: launch the design system. And during this phase, the team has its eyes on a shared prize, and any and all work and discussions and disagreements and stresses and detours happen in the warm glow of a very bright light at the end of the tunnel. However hard things are now, we think, it will all be worth it in the end. I've lived through this myself. So this is a picture of me and the team at GDS the day that we launched the GovUK design system. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this was probably the best day of my career. So 18 months of research and design and redesign and documenting and testing and iterating and failing and eventually passing our funding review all came to fruition on this day. The relief was palpable, and it was only really surpassed by the pride that I felt at what we'd managed to achieve. And any exhaustion that I felt in that moment was swept away in this kind of flurry of excitement and recognition and glory, and it was indeed all worth it in the end. But what I know now, and what's so obvious with hindsight, is that the launch wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a much harder, endless, relentless, and more difficult journey. That light at the end of the tunnel turned out to be nothing more but the entrance to another one. And for many design system teams, it's the only light that they ever get. So giddy from this kind of euphoric moment of going live, many design systems teams kind of breeze confidently into this post-launch land, ready to kind of bask in the glory of their efforts as teams start to adopt the design system and incorporate it into their day-to-day work. But unfortunately, it's at this point, as teams start to kind of kick the proverbial tires of what we've done and stakeholders start to ask what's next, that we often come to realise that the people in our organisation have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of what we're offering. Demand surges, and we are bombarded with reports of gaps in our system, and stakeholders start to question whether our team even needs to exist anymore now that we've built the thing that they were expecting. And this leads me straight into the second reason that I think design systems can cause burnout, which is that they're seen as static products and not living services. So although awareness of design systems has matured significantly over the past decade or so, a continued sticking point seems to be around the organisational need for ongoing investment. And this is absolutely not helped by external agencies and consultants, and I do my very best not to be one of them, who promise to come in and build you a design system. As an aside, if you are an agency or a consultant who does this, please, on behalf of in-house teams across the land, stop. It is like promising to build a national rail services without thinking about who's going to drive the trains once the tracks are in place. Design systems are a continuous service that come with ongoing operational costs. But the idea that design systems are a single point deliverable is a pervasive myth that just won't die. And I know that I'm probably preaching to the converted here, but I think that there are two aspects to this that can contribute to burnout. So the first is that product teams using the design system will often place unrealistic demands on a design system team to provide everything that they need from day one. As design system makers and maintainers, we know that our systems will grow and evolve over time, and that the gap between what teams need and what we're able to offer them will shrink as the system matures. That rather than solving every need from day one, our task is to reduce duplication of effort as time goes on. But for people who've never worked on a design system, this is not always as obvious as it is to us. So rather than viewing the design system as a living entity with ever-increasing returns, they focus on the gaps. And this leaves us facing a fire hose of demand that can make us feel as though nothing we're doing is ever enough. I'm going to talk about that in a few more minutes. But the second problem that this misconception causes is that it creates a threat to our funding. Stakeholders who misunderstand the sort of evolutionary nature of design systems can assume that once we've shipped version 1, we are no longer needed. And budget holders who don't understand the need for us to provide ongoing support and to run processes like contribution are quick to assume that they can reallocate our time to matters that they consider more pressing. And no matter how many times we explain how things really work, this misunderstanding seems quite persistent, and it leaves us in the position of having to constantly defend ourselves and prove our worth. So the constant need to explain why we are doing what we're doing and why it's valuable is exhausting, and it really feeds into this feeling of futility that nothing we do is ever enough. It's also really challenging, and this leads me on to the third reason for design systems burnout, which is that design systems value is hard to quantify. Even in organisations with the most supportive and trusting leadership, it's not enough to just say, trust us. Eventually, someone is going to say, prove it. And despite a lot of articles and conference talks and regular discussions with each other on how to effectively measure the impact of design systems, most of us still find this really hard to do. And I think there's a few reasons for this. For starters, it's actually relatively easy to gather qualitative feedback on the value of our design system, so things like testimonials and anecdotal benefits from people who use the system and like it. But the trouble is that it's often not what the business really wants from us. Because what stakeholders actually mean when they say prove it is prove it with numbers. So if it's money that you want, give me something that I can attach a clear cost to. And when it comes to gathering quantitative data, there are sort of two areas that we can look at, and neither is particularly straightforward. So the first one is we can look at our impact on the user experience of the products that the design system is used to create. So we might ask things like, have we helped to increase conversion? Has our customer satisfaction score improved? Has engagement gone up? Are product updates happening more regularly now? But this presents a real challenge for us with design system teams, because our impact on the end user experience is nearly always diluted and mixed in with other factors like product teams, delivery processes, the efficacy of other systems and tools that the teams use, the overall health of the design and development culture and operations in the organisation. And so pinpointing really to any degree of accuracy a design system's impact on quantitative product metrics is often an unwinnable game, but it is also often one that we're asked to play anyway. So our second option is to collect metadata about the design system. So things like the number of teams who are adopting the design system, or the number of components used, or the percentage of products built using the design system. And these things are definitely easier to measure, but they are only really meaningful if our stakeholders fundamentally believe in the value of the system already. Because nobody really cares about the whole company using something that they don't see the point in. This isn't an easy problem to solve, and to my knowledge, no one has found a universal formula for persuading stakeholders to keep the money coming in. If you have, please come and find me after this and we will make a lot of money together. So the best we can really do is kind of understand what our organisation cares about and build up a picture that taps into that. But it's not much fun, is it? Making the case for continued funding is difficult and tiresome, and probably not really why most of us got into this work. But it's inescapable. And again, I know that I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but I do think that it's worth acknowledging because it all contributes again to this decreased sense of accomplishment. This can make it feel like we're speaking a different language to our stakeholders and our users. So we might know that what we're doing is valuable, and we might know that we're working as hard as we can, but if we can't tell that story in the way that people want to hear it, then it feels like nothing we're doing is ever good enough. And this connects to the fourth reason that I think design systems cause burnout, which is that we hear way more about our failures than our success. I often hear people describing design systems work as thankless, and I definitely understand where that comes from. As design system maintainers, we are providing a service to the organisation, and as with any service, people are way more likely to tell us when we're getting it wrong than when we're getting it right. This is completely normal, but somehow it feels more personal when your customers are also your colleagues. I think that subconsciously we sort of expect fellow designers and developers to take time to give us good feedback. So the fact that they know on some level what it's like to do our jobs makes their silence on our successes feel kind of inhumane. And this is where I'm going to say something a bit strange. You know how they say no news is good news? If we apply to design systems, then we can assume that that means that no feedback means that everything is working as expected, and our users are also satisfied. I also think, in the case of design systems, that bad news is also good news. And that's because since the vast majority of design systems are not mandated, we are reliant on teams in the organisation choosing to use them over alternatives like creating their own product level solutions, or in the worst cases, even setting up their own local design systems. So when teams come to us with feedback like, well, this header component only has space for 4 nav items, but we have 5, or your focus states don't work properly in Safari, or I tried to contribute a pattern, but nobody responded to me, or we use a different theme on this part of the site and your design system doesn't support it. I see it as a sign that they're engaged and on some level that they are invested in its success. If they're taking the time to tell us how to make the system better, it's because they want it to be better, right? They want to use it. Or at least rationally, that's what I do. But the problem is, I'm not a robot. We are not robots. And so however our logical brains might process this as a positive indication, we are human beings and we're doing our best, and constant criticism doesn't feel very nice. And this creates an unfortunate paradox. As engagement and buy-in and usage of the system increases, so too does the amount of criticism and, kind of constructive or otherwise criticism that we receive. And that means that the more impactful our design system is, the more we're going to hear about its shortcomings. Our success is going to make us feel like we're failing, almost by design. As well as being kind of demoralizing, it also makes it really hard to prioritize work. Because when goodwill and trust is our currency for encouraging adoption, it makes it really hard to just put these issues on ice. And this leads me on to the 5th and final reason that I'm going to share that I think design systems cause burnout, which is that we care too much about too much. As systems thinkers, we are hardwired to keep our eye on the big picture and all of the problems that that picture contains. And this creates a couple of issues that can significantly erode our sense of progress. So firstly, we understand that our design systems are made up of lots of interconnected parts, and that even seemingly small decisions that we make can have consequences for its overall health. We know that design systems are multipliers, and so a single design choice that we make can quickly get scaled across multiple products, and if we get it wrong, then rolling back on that choice creates widespread disruption to adopting teams and can weaken trust with our connection and our kind of relationship to those teams. And that's a really heavy load to bear. And in my experience, this tends to make us quite cautious and fairly risk averse, meaning that we often want to take our time to really build confidence in our decisions before we make any updates. And that's not a bad thing. To some degree, I think design system teams need to move at a slower pace than their product counterparts because of the scope and the scale of their work. But it can go too far. I've worked in teams where we've as good as kind of ground to a halt because we're too scared of making a misstep. When we see every move as having potentially far-reaching, disastrous consequences, we stop making progress. And another problem that we face is that being aware of all of the problems also means being aware of all the problems that you're not solving. So the breadth of the work that we're doing means that there is pretty much an endless supply of problems and issues to fix and improvements to make. And I do think that as systems thinkers, we are especially empathetic and especially sensitive to the pain of knowing that we have to say no, even though sometimes we know it's necessary. Oh God, spoiler. So even if we know that we can't be everything to everyone, I think we're kind of hardwired to want to. And in fact, I'd say it's the very qualities that make us good at our jobs. So our empathy, our problem-solving skills, and our ability to hold the whole picture in mind, that makes us so vulnerable to burnout. And it makes me think of this meme that you'll pretend you haven't just seen. Do what you love, and you'll work super fucking hard all the time with no separation or any boundaries, and also take everything extremely personally. I'm in this meme. And this worries me because I think that for many of us, it's the thing that kind of attracts us to this work in the first place, so the desire to help people and to have an impact and to make a difference, that can often end up driving us out of it. So is it any wonder, given all that we are burnt out, given that, to summarise, that we overvalue outputs over outcomes, making it feel like we're facing a never-ending checklist of things to deliver, and that our design systems are seen as static products and not living services, and this creates unrealistic pressure to have every problem solved from day one. Given that design system value is hard to quantify, it's hard for us to tell our story in the right way, which can make it feel like what we're doing is never enough. That we hear more about our failures than our success, so it feels like we're never really getting anything right. And given that we just fundamentally care too much about too much, wishing that we could solve all of the problems and be kind of painfully aware of everything that we can't fix. So on that really cheerful note, is there anything we can do about it? I've just spent the last few minutes or so kind of making the case that design systems are destined to burn us out. So is there actually anything to be done, or should we all just quit right now? Well, you could quit. Although, if anyone is here with their boss, could you just wait a couple of days so it doesn't look like it was my fault? Now, you might think I'm being sarcastic here, and it would be quite on brand for me, but I am being deadly serious. I want to validate that it is very okay to walk away from this work for a time or forever. I have taken a break before, and I think at some point I'll probably do it again. And design systems, contrary to how we sometimes feel about them, are not life. Right, you existed before you worked on a design system. You will continue to exist afterwards. And yes, you absolutely could quit and pursue a different path. But for many of you, the benefits of this work will still outweigh its drawbacks. So if we do decide to stay, then can we better protect ourselves against burnout, and how? Do you remember how at the start of this talk I said that I thought that the key to design systems burnout lay in that third component defined by Herbert Freudenberger, so that decreased sense of accomplishment? Given that, I think this is also where we can look for solutions. So to really counter the risk of burnout, we have to cultivate a sense of accomplishment. So what does this look like in practice? Burnout is really complex and it can be really hard to come out of. So I don't have a silver bullet for you, unfortunately, but I do have some suggestions about where we can start. 4, to be exact. We can tell better stories. We can radically de-scope. We can celebrate success often, and we can reconnect to our purpose. So let's go through each one of those in turn and look at how, starting with telling a better story. So I think we have to start being more honest about what design systems are and what they offer and what they're not. And this is especially important at the pitching stage, when we're telling leadership how money our design systems will save the business when we're no longer throwing the company's money down the drain, building buttons over and over again. We like to tell stakeholders that design systems will make duplication of effort a thing of the past, and that we talk about this in a kind of very binary way, and we say, we're going to save the organisation millions and millions of pounds with common components. But the reality is that while a well-maintained design system will gradually reduce duplication of effort over time, it will never completely stop it from happening. And that's because not every component or pattern will be provided on day one. Not every team will consume the design system on day one. And fundamentally, because divergence and experimentation is part of the design process, and it will never completely go away, and that's okay. We also need to move away from the language of single point delivery. So rather than promising to build a design system, we need to over-communicate the reality of this work, which is that design systems are about using tools and processes and improving inter-organizational relationships to make design and development more efficient. This work is an ongoing practice, and by communicating it in this way, we take the pressure off that launch moment and we set better expectations. And this might be a harder sell than an oversimplified sales pitch that says a design system will save 25% of a company's design and development costs, but it will put us in a much better position to show off the value that we do deliver. So let's move on to radical de-scoping. Now, Coco Chanel famously said, before you leave the house, look in the mirror and take one thing off. And I think we can take inspiration for this when it comes to design systems with a slight adjustment. Before you share your roadmap, look at your objectives and take almost every fucking thing off. In my experience, we perpetually overcommit, and we have to start getting better at this. So when we're goal setting for design systems, it's a good idea to think about which users we most need to support, which products we most need to serve, which platforms we most need to accommodate, and finally, and most importantly, what we can't commit to. It's a really good idea to regularly revisit these, at least every quarter, and to be really vigilant against scope creep. Because if I've learned one thing from 7 years of working in this space, it's that your capacity is always less than you think. And on the subject of goal setting, I know this isn't a very sexy hot take, but honestly, fuck moonshots. Moonshots came straight from the capitalism playbook, and I hate them. I hate aiming for an unattainable vision. All it does is just wear us down. And the thing about setting achievable goals is that you actually get to feel a sense of achievement rather than thinking about all the things that you didn't manage to do. And on that note, something else that we can do to shift that emphasis is to celebrate success often. We can all help, wherever we sit in our teams and our organisations, to help to cultivate a culture of appreciation within our teams by acknowledging each other's wins and calling out good work. So it's really simple, but I'm a really big fan of making sure there's always space in team retros to talk about what has gone well. So when you're in a retro, if you're running a retro, do contribute to this. It's so easy to go into the room with a list of things that you want to improve, but it's equally important to acknowledge what you and your colleagues are getting right. I'm also a big fan of the practice of honouring our achievements with cake. So here is an example of a lovely showstopper that I made for the WK Design System team when we shipped a bunch of accessibility updates on our first year anniversary. And maybe this just seems like a small, insignificant thing, but it really does pay to take the time to mark your successes and to just look in the rearview mirror from time to time and say, yeah, we did good, have some sugar. And don't just keep it to yourself. Spam Slack with your design system updates. Do a weekly roundup of everything that you've done that week and bask in the dopamine hits that you get as people react with emojis and a torrent of cut and pasted well dones. Really feel the love in those. And it may all sound like I'm being a little bit flippant here, but celebrating success reminds us to have fun in our work. And I found that its effect is cumulative. Celebrating our wins, even the small ones, allows us to top up our emotional bank account. It helps to counteract the burnout that depletes us. So do make time for it, even if it seems frivolous. And the final piece of advice that I want to share with you today is to reconnect to your purpose. And this is maybe the most important one for me. Design systems have taken on a life of their own. They were once a means to an end, but they have now become the end itself. So organisations no longer talk in general terms about wanting to improve efficiency or make things more consistent. They simply say, we need a design system. But design systems are not one thing, and no matter how many dickhead consultants like me might try and sell you an out-of-the-box approach, there is no template solution. Approaching design systems in a formulaic way leaves us with a checklist of artifacts to deliver, and it means that we lose sight of our purpose and why we're doing this work in the first place. But to really feel that sense of accomplishment that's so important for counteracting burnout, we need to connect to our purpose, both on a personal level and on a team level. So individually, why did you start working in this space in the first place? What itches did it let you scratch? For me, personally, I really care about creating more inclusive experiences and helping people to connect with each other, and design systems are just my current best way of doing that. So when I feel burnt out, reminding myself of the decisions that I've made and the work that I've done to this end along the way kind of helped me to realise that I am making a difference, even if it feels like I'm not. And what motivates you and your colleagues as a collective? So what is it that gets you all fired up? What kind of work gives you meaning? And what unites you as a team and gives you a shared sense of purpose? What makes you feel like part of something bigger? And this bit, I think, is key. I believe that both the best and worst things about design systems are that they connect us to something bigger than ourselves. The reach that we have sitting in design system teams can feel like a really heavy burden sometimes, but it also helps us to see the things that connect us together. And this is where I want to leave you today. Burnout in general sucks, and if you are in this room, then the unfortunate truth is that the career path that you've chosen and the type of person that you likely are means that you're probably at a slightly greater risk of burning out than the average. But if I can offer you a word of comfort, it's that you are not alone in that. Design systems are a collective thing. Did you see me taking this earlier? None of you are looking at the camera. So I know that when I'm struggling with burnout, a huge part of what pulls me back out of it is the community around me. So all of you lot and all the others who aren't here. So as system thinkers, I believe that we are intrinsically smart and capable and empathetic and compassionate people, and our community is one of the strongest tools in our arsenal. We are collectively a real force to be reckoned with. And before the urge for me to break into a terrible rendition of You'll Never Walk Alone fully overtakes me, I'll just leave you with one reminder. You have got this, and we've all got you. Thank you.
There was a lot of things in this talk that I think that we can all really sympathize with. How are you all feeling so far? Good? Yay, whoa, I'm getting some waves from up there. Excellent. As the guy who was late, he's making up now by waving. Well done. So that's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. First of all, before we get started, oh, this is a weird angle. I can't even see you. It's like strange. I'll try over this way and see if this works any better. Before we get started, thank you so much for all the talks. It was really fantastic. We talked about how it is to be somebody who is in the team, taking on a massive project of many products, and then how that can cause burnout. So it's a nice link. We have quite a lot of questions, actually. So if you want to add questions, please do so. If you want to ask in the audience, just put your hands up and say I have a question. Otherwise, I'm just going to go with it. We're going to start here. Damola, so one question which is directed to you straight away. Please feel free for the rest of you to answer as well. When it comes to naming, how do you work across design and engineering to ensure alignment and naming that makes sense to both disciplines?
Okay, pretty interesting. I'll talk from like a designer standpoint. So there is this, I can't quite remember the person, but it's this designer on design Twitter, that just posted a random component of like, what is this thing called? And people call it like 50 different names. There was one component that had like, God knows how many names, right? But I found that what works is, most things always have like a universally acceptable name, right? But you want to have like I would call sort of aliases for them, sort of like, if it's not called this, what else could it be called, right? And when you do stuff like random polls, ask your team members, like, what would you call this thing? You can find maybe 50% of your team members call it something, but maybe 25% call it something else, right? So you go with like universally acceptable name, but you always have like aliases so that when I search for this stuff, it still pops up somewhere. And that's sort of what I would do if I was a design systems person. I'm not, but yeah.
Looking at Amy straight away, I mean, in your experience, like, what's a good way of looking at naming? Because I know teams that spend a lot of time on naming, and I feel like sometimes it's an escape from what they actually should be focusing on.
No, I think naming is really important, but I do think that there are cases where you'll never get 100% consensus. So my advice is just get as close as you can to that, go with the majority, and then use tools to reinforce your naming convention. So yeah, if you have like a design system documentation website, build aliases into the search so people can search using the name that they know for the thing, and then can be taken to the thing that as you've called it. Keep an eye on what people are typing into that search so that you can adjust the name if you need to. Yeah, I mean, it is hard to get consensus. I think we did an exercise when I was working at GDS where we asked people to name a design pattern, and in 5 minutes we generated 186 different names with duplicates removed for the pattern. So it is, yeah, there's not consensus, but I think just get as close as you can to that and then try to reinforce your naming conventions and educate people on those.
Excellent, thank you. And Tony, you guys are in the middle of it all. How are you dealing with this?
Completely agree. Go with the majority. I don't think you'll ever find a component consensus. It's one of those things. Everyone, it's a little bit like design, really. Everything is, everyone's got their own view of it. It's a bit like fashion, so everyone will give it a different spin. So, yeah, find the commonalities and stick with it.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Continuing on your talk about onboarding, what did you find to be the biggest challenge on onboarding? This is again for all of you. Like, what is the biggest challenge on onboarding the rest of the team?
I think the biggest challenge about onboarding is not even on the design systems side. It's like onboarding on a team generally is difficult. It's very, very hard. And then layering it on something that is fairly unfamiliar can also be a bit daunting, right? But I find that the most challenging thing was figuring out where stuff was, right? But it was actually very easy to find it, but I just didn't know where to look in the first place, right? But there was this designer I spoke with, and she was like, yeah, we should have a call, and figured out everything for me in like 15 minutes. I was like, yeah, so this is where this stuff is. Once you get there, search for it, and you'd find it there. And it was that simple, right? But also finding stuff that I had like knowledge of, I was like, oh, this should be named this, or this was what I thought it was, but not being able to find that stuff was a bit tricky for me. Another thing was also like making sure I was important, like my team is pretty big and there's like maybe not 1,000,001, but quite a number of libraries. Making sure I was importing the right library into my system. I made a funny mistake of using the web library while I was working on mobile. Some things worked, but I was like, yeah, this should not be, right? So importing the right library also was a bit difficult, finding the right thing to import.
Great, thank you. Amy, you have any hot tips on onboarding success?
I think try to make it part of your user research. So really take the time to understand your company's kind of culture and the wider ecosystem the design system is going to sit in. So if you're testing the design system with users, whether that's like the code or the documentation or whatever, start by asking like, okay, where would you look for this today before you've got the system? Or if you have a design system, like say, where would you go to find this thing? If you have this task, where would you start? And pay attention to what they're saying and then infiltrate the existing tools and processes that they're engaging with, rather than trying to sort of fight against it. I think if you create something in isolation and just expect people to find it or go to it, it's not going to work. So you have to really make it bespoke to your company's context.
Observe how people are actually using it rather than dictating what they should be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Tony, you guys are onboarding new people all the time, I'm assuming, in your... I know for a fact that it's a big challenge and you are in the middle of it at the moment.
Yeah, it's kind of the designer experience as well when you actually join a new product team. And I agree, it's being visible. We have something called a playbook, which we're looking to introduce. We may introduce into our design system as well, but I think it's just been very clear around where you can go to find things. If we have how-to videos as well, if we have the luxury to create rich media videos, all of the documentation that goes behind onboarding Token Studio, how to attach it to your file, where do you go for new libraries, all of that kind of good stuff. Yeah, it's all about just making the invisible visible.
Excellent, thank you. Speaking of what's included in the design system, Tony, you mentioned that you enable marketing team with the design system. Is this solely about maintaining brand consistency, or are they actually using parts of the system for their work as well?
Good question. It's the latter. So I think they're, actually no, to be fair, they're pretty much, it's more around brand consistency first, but I think the future vision is for them to self-serve with assets, tone of voice, all of the kind of great stuff that lives in design system. And we're trying to parallel with our brand team as well to introduce our brand guidelines alongside our design system under one roof as well, just to ensure that, again, clarity, visibility is as visible as we can get it.
Okay, excellent. Amy, on the design system that you have worked on, have marketing ever been involved, or any, I'm not going to say unexpected, because marketing can be a very expected team to use it, but are there sort of teams that we might not immediately think of as when we create design systems as we're using it?
Honestly, no. Mainly when I've worked, with clients that I've worked with, there has tended to be this quite hard separation between marketing and the design system. In the same way, I think there's often a separation between content design and marketing, like copywriting. There often seems to be this kind of arbitrary division between those different things, even though there is definitely an overlapping kind of concern and skill set. I don't think it should be that way, but in my experience, it often is that way.
I was just about to ask that. Do you think that there should be more collaboration between
Probably,
them?
yeah, definitely. I mean, it all forms part of the user experience. And I think if you're interested in giving kind of coherent, joined up user experiences, then you should be thinking about that kind of all the way through the funnel. But I just think organizations often aren't set up in that way. And as a design system team, how much time do you want to spend reorganizing your company versus just working within those constraints?
Fair enough. Damola, Spotify, have you got any other teams involved, or what does it look like?
I can't really speak for Spotify, but I can speak for the way I look at things, right? I got into design for the sake that people experience things a particular way, right? And design, like product design or user interface design, generally is about every single touch point of your product, right? From the marketing in some sense, to the product in itself, to the feeling like your users have after using your product, right? Like that's what design is, right? So companies are structured in specific ways, but it's also important to like cater for the end user, which is like your user, like the people that actually use this thing every single day, right? And that's what really matters at the end of the day. We're working for them. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So talking about end users and how they're using it, let's move into measuring. We did have a couple of conversations about that. Amy, you mentioned the issues of quantitative data. Should we bother? What's the hot tip?
I think we should bother as long as our expectations about what's achievable with quantitative data are realistic and managed. So I think it can be helpful to try and gather some quantitative data if you're looking at it from the perspective of, like, we can get a picture of trends over time, but I think trying to get accurate quantitative data there's only so much time that you want to spend. I think it's like the naming thing, it's kind of like get as close as you can and then just go with it, because you'll drive yourself crazy if you're trying to pinpoint that accurately. So design system metrics, quantitative metrics, unless they're metadata about the system, which you can collect accurately. If you want to measure things like impact on product design time, it's so complex and it's affected by so many other things that I'd get a sense of it and then I'd measure that sense of it over time, but I wouldn't bother trying to be scientific about it.
Fair enough. It's quite difficult to be scientific about it. I think in my experience as well, I have found sometimes that you realize a bit later on what you wished you had measured before you started, and you're like, damn it, we should have done that when we started. So yeah. Hot tip. You all heard it from Amy. It wasn't me. It was her. What are the rest? For Tony and Damola, how would you measure?
I would say sentiment is important. So certain things can be measured by, reduce design time by 75%. Like, that's a lie, right? But you can say, this person said, I would design this component before by myself, and now I didn't have to do that. And that's simple. Like, this is somebody speaking, as opposed to like just looking at the data. I was like, yeah, we lied about reducing design time by 75%. You really can't say that. But what you can do is get what people are saying and sort of consolidate that and present it. That could work.
Yeah. Still doesn't give us those numbers that Amy mentioned the stakeholders want, and I agree with that. It's very tough. So Tony, you selling the design system as an initiative to the business and getting that buy-in and now in it, what are they expecting to see, and how are you showing numbers, if any?
I agree. I'm probably on the other end of the spectrum. My exec team want to see numbers. It's a financial business. I think it very much depends on your environment and the company and how it's set up. And being able to quantify, I think for me, you need to look broader than just design. I think you need to dip into the product teams, again, looking at their velocity compared to their, without getting too deep into it, but looking at day rates aligned with velocity, sprint points per sprint. Again, it does take a lot of product knowledge and understanding how squads work and operate. But I think that's the key to unlocking the right angle of approach when talking to executives for funding and continued funding is which I loved your slide around. I know it's boring, just like we've got funding. How do we keep that funding? But I think it's a necessary evil to secure ultimately the future of your design system and to keep the lights on.
You actually showed us the numbers of the interesting setup that you guys had before the design system. Have you looked at those numbers afterwards and see if they changed in any way, or is that some kind of indicator for you guys?
I think those are our benchmark. Those are our flags in the sand. And I think they're the numbers that we want to try and reduce. Again, I think we have over 100 different component libraries in Figma when we only have 15 products. Still blows my mind today. And I think, that is the going rogue approach. We may have gone rogue a little bit, just like the engineers. So I think, it's a few of those things that in the year's time when we finish this year of implementation, I want to look back on those numbers and tell the story of improvement. So yeah, they're very much our indicators.
Fair enough. It's early on as well. Speaking of stakeholders and trying to convince them, how do you convince your stakeholders, managers with no design background, that you need more designers in your design team of 2 and that they need to work on design systems? That's a tough question. Yeah, you go first, Tony.
That is a good question. I think my advice would be to, again, take a benchmark of where you're at and, again, understand your stakeholder. If they've got no design experience, again, it can feel like you're talking to a grandparent, right? You're trying to explain something super technical, eyes glaze over when when's EastEnders coming on. But I think it's about the approach and understanding what their drivers are and if they've got a key stakeholder, if it's your PM or your PO, understanding from their point of view, like a design system can reduce the amount of time that your engineers spend building a new page or a new feature, or tapping into, doesn't have to necessarily be design or design related, because I'm a big advocate of you can talk design to people that aren't interested until you're blue in the face, but you gather nothing. But it's always interesting because the designers are expected to talk at business level and talk the business, but it's never the other way around. I've always found that quite fascinating. But yeah, find your angle with them, find what drives them, find what their needs are and their requirements are, and tailor your request around that for resource, for a design system, and show them. I think that's probably, yeah, show them how it's working, demonstrate it, don't talk in the theory, show it in the practice.
Fair enough. Amy, in your experience as a consultant and someone that comes into an organization, I guess you often meet people who don't have that design experience. How do you talk to them to get them to understand?
Very rudely. No, I mean, well, the question I think mentioned, how do you convince your stakeholders to hire more designers and get them to work on a design system when they're two designers? So I suppose I challenge that with like, well, why do you really need people to be proactively working on a design system with a team that small? Like, even if you double the size of your design team, you're going to have 4 people. So you may at that stage not need to invest that time and effort into a design system. Like, I think it's important to think about debt, but a lot of the problems that a design system might solve at a larger scale can potentially be solved with just more, closer collaboration when we're talking about that kind of scale. When I am talking to stakeholders who don't understand the importance of design systems, maybe at slightly larger scales, I think, yeah, like you said, a lot of it's about really understanding what's driving them. It's not providing a kind of one-size-fits-all sales pitch. It's figuring out, like, well, what do you care about, and how will a design system help you with those goals?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think what you said as well is interesting. It's like, sometimes we think, sometimes some organizations think that more engineers is the solution, and sometimes we think more designers is the solution. But actually, what is the setup? What is it that we're trying to do? And are we having enough cross communication with other people? And maybe that isn't the answer. It's not more designers. It's actually something else. So yeah, interesting. We're going to slightly shift here. I'm going to come back to you as well, Damola, don't worry about it. We're going to slightly shift topic here. Amy, I have 2 questions, which is about burnout. Directly here. You mentioned that you're coming to us from the depths of your own burnout. What's your advice for someone who is burnout already? And we actually have a very similar question. With burnout being a huge and persistent challenge, how do you refresh yourself and recharge your creative batteries and mental health? What's your tips?
Go to the doctor. I'm actually sort of not really joking. I think when you are burnt out, it's a really, really complex thing. And it can, like, I was listening to a podcast the other day when one of the co-hosts was a presenter, and she was saying time and time again, she sees people coming to her office who have recently been signed off work for like 2 weeks because they're burnt out. And they're like, well, I thought I'd come and see you, but I'll be back in 2 weeks. And, maybe you can help me in the meantime. And every single time it gets to the 2 weeks and they're like, I'm not ready to go back. And like, it can take a really, really long time to recover from burnout. We don't all have the luxury of taking loads of time off. And at some point, I think that can stop helping as well. So I think it's a balance of, as I kind of said in the talk, figuring out what helps you to have a sense of accomplishment. And I talked about that in the context of design systems work, but I think in more general terms, like, that might be something completely unrelated to your job. It might be your hobbies or your, endeavors outside of work. Figure out how you can start to feel a sense of achievement again. Like, I think completely grinding to a halt isn't great. However, breaks are important. Like, take time off, take time to reflect about how you've ended up here and what you can do to get yourself out of it.
We also have here, which I don't think is a question, but it's kind of more sounds like an expression of burnout. I am going to try to do my best to read this out. Why, God, why, please, why, parentheses, I'm burnt out. So I'm going to cover that, so we covered that one. I've also got here someone who's just making a statement. A design system is not a product. I don't know who that is, but I am looking at someone who I'm suspecting might have said that. I think many people agree with this. You mentioned this as well. On that note, for those people who think, as we talk about design systems to organization, and we kind of tell them that it is something that they need to think about, if it's not a product, you mentioned service, Amy. Do you want to just elaborate a little bit on that?
I like to think of them as services because I think it kind of puts the emphasis on the things that often get under-focused on with design systems. So support, contribution, process, onboarding, like all that kind of stuff that we often neglect. Talking about it as a service, I think, sets an expectation that it is an ongoing thing and that there are processes and kind of exchanges and collaborations and things that need to happen around it. That said, I honestly, I've made the argument, don't call it a product before. I actually don't really care what we call it. I think the important point is why are we saying that? What is the actual ask? So you mentioned treat it like a product because it needs continuous funding, because it needs a team, it needs to be properly resourced. And I agree with all of that. So I don't think it actually matters whether we say it's a product or a service or whatever you want to call it, as long as you're being explicit about what you're actually asking for when you're saying that.
I was going to say, I completely agree around with the service point as well. Thinking about how we consume services these days, design systems fall into that way of consumption. It's a continuous thing. It's forever to be maintained. It will continually grow. And I think, where my standpoint comes from is ensuring that there is the bedrock there to ensure that can continue. I think that's where my kind of product thinking comes from. I completely agree on the service. It's a continuous thing.
Yeah, I think I'm asking you because I've said both in my past, and I agree. I think for me what's important is that whoever is going to take that on, realizing that it's going to have an impact on what they're doing in the daily work, and they're taking on something else that they have to commit to. And that needs nurture and care, and if they don't do that, it's not going to be successful. Whether you call it a product or whether you call it a service, as you're pointing out, Amy, as long as you know what it is and why you're saying it. Damola, do you have any comments on that?
Service product really doesn't matter. I think what matters is understanding what you're working on, what you're doing, and understanding the impact of your work on people that are going to use the stuff you're working on. Could be a service or a product. Something that's also unique is that different companies can be very unique, and calling it a product because a company understands that when we work on a product, we will continuously maintain that product. Might resonate with a particular kind of company. Calling it a service, I resonate with somebody else. So the core idea is understand who you're seeking to, understand what matters to them, and communicate in such a way that you can convince them, not manipulate them, but convince them to do what you want to.
I have got a few questions left, quite a lot of questions left. Unfortunately, we haven't got much time left. So I'm just going to quickly rush through some of these. And I'm doing this because we are going to be networking. So for those of you who have put questions in that you didn't get a response to, please feel free to come to us during the networking and ask directly. And maybe we can get some of this. One of the questions is, what design animal are you? We might leave that one for right now. What's the best way to showcase a design system as a case study? Subject matters experts, how long do you feel you need to work to product to hit a moment when you can truly understand it? All very interesting questions. Someone just starting a design system, what are the basic and how should you get started? These are perfect questions to bring up in the pub. Absolutely. Is there an argument that the system life cycle requires different skill set? Maybe you can quit at the beginning and let other people keep continuing. That's an interesting point to ponder on, also over a drink. You talked about embracing chaos, Damola. When would be the best time to consolidate? Great thing to go up straight to Damola and ask him afterwards. Someone here mentioned as well, if it's not written down, it's not done. Like it, that's just a statement, fantastic. And Tony, with a big initiative like this, obviously there need to be work with engineers on how was the support and collaboration. Another great thing to speak directly to Tony about in a pub near you. With that, unfortunately, we have to wrap up the Q&A session. I want to thank all the speakers so much. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic. If you want to take your seats, I'm going to do a quick wrap up. I do apologize that we didn't have more time for the questions. I really appreciate all the questions that you guys have put in here. So before we wrap up, we've done this one already. I think I'm looking for a bowl of some sort. Yes, there is a bowl. There is a bowl. So I think on the way in here, too. Okay. Wow. Can I ask for an assistant? Lauren, you're not part of, I hope your number is not in here. There we go. So I've got my sister Lauren here. So going to pick the first one. This is the raffle. Can I get a drum roll? Come on, drum roll. There we go. Oh, nice, nice. That was, yes. Number 51, 5-1. Oh my God, I'm just reaching my bingo dream. 5-1. 51?
They went home.
They went home.
Savage.
Savage.
Right, nice.
You snooze, you lose. Next one, number 8. 8. They went home. Okay, great. This is the most successful raffle I've ever been to.
8, or are you just looking for your ticket?
8. 8, anyone? Or 51? 5-1 or 8? Oh, there. No, that's not a ticket. That's a mobile you got in your hand. You can't just draw a new number on it. Well, by now you probably could. Let me see. The next one is, 109. 109. Oh, we have a winner. Come on, winner. So we have a winner. Get a gift bag. Applause all around. Then we need a second winner. These ones don't get anything.
Oh, that's a shame. Read it whichever way you want.
Oh, gosh. Wow, this is one of those funny ones that is...
Is it 96 or 69?
96. Is it, what did someone say over there?
I got 96.
So you got 96? Who's got 96? So we have a winner. What have you got? What have you got? Okay, fine. In that case, we got a winner 96 over here. We got a second winner. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And for the speakers, before you go and talk about all the fantastic questions in the pub, we also have some gifts for you as well, so Christine will sort that out. First, some thanks yous before we go. Thank you so much to NewDay and the team for hosting us this evening, for the pizza and the drinks. She's already packing up. This has been fantastic. Really appreciate that. Woo! Thank you to YLD, especially the YLD events team, who's actually the people who make this happen in the background. So thank you so much. Brilliant. Want to thank the photographer and videographer that's walked around and make us all look fantastic online on videos and whatnot. Thank you. I've already thanked the speakers. Going to do that again. Without them, this wouldn't obviously not happen. So that's very good. And last but not least, thank you to you guys for coming, for the community, for supporting us in general. It's absolutely amazing. I should also say that a week ago we were supposed to have this, but then we had to go to the Design System Awards, which was amazing. And we were nominated. We didn't win, but it was fantastic to be there. And I want to thank everyone who voted for us. And we also want to congratulate the people who actually won. They did an amazing job. But yeah, it was really fantastic to be part of that. And the community keeps going because of you guys. We are going to be back. And if you feel that this inspired you to give a talk, whether you are a seasoned speaker or whether you have never spoken before and you want to have a crack at your first talk, come and speak to us. I think there's even a link in that fantastic barcode, QR code that actually works now. And there's a form, or you can come directly to me or to anyone else from YLD, and we can see what we can do to have you speaking on a stage near you. Or if you want to be a sponsor or your company wants to be the people who host this lovely event, then come and talk to me as well. This is the place where we're going to go, the gas station. We're just going to pack up. You guys go. We'll be there. And drinks are on you guys. Just want to point that out. So don't get any funny ideas. But let's go there. Let's talk more design systems. And let's continue the conversation. Thank you so much, everyone.